if your situation falls in the lines of discrimination, something that's violating your rights, then it is important that this is documented through HR, because typically when you're filing a EEOC complaint, that filing, they will ask a number of questions. Did you follow the proper chain of command? Your company may have a grievance policy, but all of these things are ways to document your experience, even if you do intend to exit.
When you talk about documentation, I've talked about it before, like a CYA journal or something like that, where you can keep documentation. I'm sure you talk about this maybe in the book as well. Can you talk about documenting and how to document? Because, see, a person like me is thinking, like, even though you reported it to HR, you have to come to HR properly with the right information as well. So HR is the I guess first reporting step, but you need to document that stuff so when you come to HR, you are ready and prepared, correct?
Absolutely. And sadly, the burden of proof is on you.
Mm-hmm.
It definitely rests on your shoulders. So it's really important that you document those experiences, those conversations that you're having, perhaps with this person that you're having this experience with. But I want to tell you, and I want to just be very candid with people. You can have all the documentation in the world. If the mission is to get rid of someone, unfortunately, companies out there that are rogue, they will do it by any means necessary, even if that involves fabricating a story.
Mm.
And these are the dangers that that companies get themselves into when they're hiring the wrong people, that lack integrity. Is that these sorts of things come up, and they cost companies a lot of money, are some and definitely harm their professional reputation, especially if you're an educational institution that's providing services to the community. Because the way that my mind is trained to believe that is, if you treat your employees this way, I can't possibly believe that you will treat your customers well. And so, so there are just so many variables, in these situations. But I definitely, my experience was, you can have all the documentation. Hell, I'm an HR professional, and I had so much documentation. And to be quite honest, the system it's designed, for them. Like, when you think about a policy and procedures handbook, they're great. But one of the things that I've learned is that those rules apply to certain people.
Mm.
And that is just a harsh reality. A grievance process, that grievance process isn't designed for an employee to position themselves to win a lawsuit against a company. It's in place, really. They're collecting all of this information. And I think that once you get to that level, you probably need to seek counsel.
Mm. Okay,
And
yes. Okay, you said that, and you said, these things can cost companies a lot of money, but I feel like we skipped a step because, I know people who have sued, who are trying to sue, who are in the process of getting that started. The EEOC is always questionable because some people have had luck with the EEOC, some people have not. So, and we probably just need to have you back to have a deeper conversation or some sort of Q&A or something, because there's so many questions I'm sure a lot of people have when it comes to particular specific situations, but what has been your experience with the EEOC? Because it's come up several times. I know people who have tried to approach the EEOC with blatant discrimination, issues and proof. We Ashley Morgan was on a few weeks ago, and she had an issue, and she said they even told her, we believe you were discriminated against, but we can't do anything. We can't help you. Right? And I was talking to a family member about it, wanting closure. And I'm like, sometimes you're just not going to get it. You're just not going to get it. So what is your recommendation, or if you could give, just kind of maybe general information when dealing with the EEOC, if people want to go that route before they go take it further with an attorney and all of that?
This is really, it's just tough because we have to think about the systems, the institutions, the people that are managing these agencies. They are overwhelmed with complaints. And honestly, my experience in filing an EEOC complaint, I felt like I was talking to someone that was basically an inexperienced case manager.
Mm.
They're receiving my information, and they really, they're not attorneys. They've received an overwhelming amount of cases or complaints that are coming in, and honestly, I think literally someone probably has to have a noose around their neck for them to take their case on. And honestly, I have not found the EEOC to be very effective. I've just found them to be an organization or agency that collects data.
Mm.
And even with that, because once you go through that process and you are and once they've completed whatever investigation, and if they decide, and there's probably a 90% chance that they will not take your case, um, they will provide you with a right to sue letter. And so with that right to sue letter, you have 90 days to basically file a lawsuit, which means that now the onus is on you to get out there and retain an attorney. And that's a whole nother conversation, because when you think about even that process alone, not every attorney is created equal, the competency levels of attorneys. And so I will tell you from my experience, one of the things that I did believe that it was important to make sure that people that purchased my book, that they received information on deadlines, term limits, because these are some of the reasons why court cases get thrown out, because you did not meet certain term limits or even understand certain the process, the court process. So I'm not an attorney. Let me just make sure that I put that out there as a disclaimer. This was just based on my experience, but these were things that I wish that I had known when I had to make decisions to consult with legal counsel.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up because I want to get into this book and what happened with your case, and you can talk more about it, but you missed a deadline, or your attorney missed a deadline due to the I don't know how to say it, maybe the attorney wasn't great, and then that changed what ended up happening with you. So yeah, guys, and surviving toxic workplaces, and we'll have all the information below this video on YouTube, and I'll put it in the show notes as well. But Ty gets into like those necessary deadlines, that sort of thing, so you can make sure that if you do find yourself in a situation where you need to go that route, that you have the correct information. I know somebody right now who is looking to do something against their employer, and it's very difficult to find an attorney, mainly because of who the employer is too. That has a lot to do with it sometimes too, because
Oh,
if it's a
absolutely.
big employer, there's not a lot of attorneys who want to take that on, so there are just so many things. I'm sure you can talk about it more than I can. I just know from what I hear from talking to black women all the time.
You're absolutely right, Erin. That is a problem. And and it's a very you're in such a vulnerable position. When if you ever get into a position where you need an attorney, you're in a vulnerable position. And I have to say that I have been so disappointed in how many, the some of the attorneys that are out there, they make these promises, they collect your retainer, and then once they collect your retainer, then, they're operating like snails, and
Yeah.
there's no sense of urgency. Or even in my situation where a deadline was missed, I was not informed. I ended up reaching out to another attorney, and they had the access where they looked up my case, and they informed me that my case had been dismissed, and it was because my attorney failed to respond. And it was disheartening because when those situations occur, there is absolutely nothing you can do, because when you run out of time, you run out of time. It doesn't matter that it was the attorney's fault. The only thing that you could possibly, your only recourse is malpractice.
Mm.
And to be perfectly honest, when you've experienced, you know, health issues, racism in the workplace, retaliation in the workplace, it beats you the hell down, and you're exhausted. And at that point, you just want to move forward with your life, with your career. And so and that's what they're banking on. And even and with big companies, big organizations, you never know what their political influence looks like. So therefore, you have attorneys that will not take it on, and sometimes it almost feel like they're colluding.
Mm.
So it's so difficult to trust, because when you think about that community, you know that many of them know each other. And so it's just really a sad, sad situation. And so I think that at this juncture in my life, at this age in my life, I'm not fighting, you know, but what I will do is I'll make more informed decisions about my career. Um, and so it's just, it was overwhelming, to say the least, and it was so disappointing. And so in that workbook that I provide also, it has a checklist for those that are in a situation where they may need to hire an attorney. And I will tell you, do not be afraid to ask the tough questions. Make it very clear about your expectations in terms of communication, in terms of notifying you, because when someone has the power of attorney to manage your case, they're the ones receiving all of the information, and you're sitting there waiting for them. So make sure that this is someone, number one, that has a proven track record of results. Check cases, not reviews that you read online.